Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Aaron Gordon here, and we are back here with the Aaron Gordon podcast. I have my special guest, my old academic advisor at Valparaiso University, Andrea. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, doing really well. In Minneapolis now. So
Yeah. So, obviously, we're kind of going, down a timeline, and obviously, you were a swimmer for most people who know you. What kind of got you into, swimming? Like, when was the first time you actually swam, and like, what age could you start swimming?
yeah, so I started swimming. Really funny. I hated water when I was younger.
Really?
Um, Dad would buy me toys, like if I put my head underwater at swim lessons.
Mhm.
Like swimming didn't seem like it was going to be the route. Until it was like I was in like the little pool for swim lessons, and my instructor was like, I think you could move up to the big pool now. And I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just kind of came naturally. I think I joined the swim team when I was in second grade, was when I first actually started competitively swimming. It was just kind of like it kind of came to me. I went from like the little pool, and then all of a sudden, they're having me do laps, and it was like, yeah, this is fine. And then I was like too scared as a kid to try anything else. So it was like, I liked swimming, and then I was like, all right, I don't want to do anything else. I'll stick with
Yeah.
it. So
So then, like, how did that go into, you doing it in high school, you doing it in college? How was that, process like?
sure. Yeah. I think, for me, I did not get serious about swimming, really honestly, until probably my senior year in high school. Parents kind of, their big thing for my family, for like my brother and sister and I, they did not care what we did, as long as we had something that we were passionate about. Whether it was a hobby, they were like, we don't care, just you need to be doing something, outside of school, to just, I think, kind of, do the well-rounded type of thing. So, yeah, so I swam throughout middle school. Again, like I was fairly successful. I think, my big like claim to fame was fifth grade. I won the 100 IM at our, and I liked it. I had some friends, on the team, and I was fairly good at it for not really putting that much effort into it.
Yeah.
So I've got like the broad, like German shoulders, was like we has always said, and
Yeah.
that's just kind of like helped with swimming. So I would say I just kind of did it again more because I didn't really want to do anything else. There were probably a couple times where I was like, I want to quit, but my parents were like, well, what are you going to pick up instead? And I was like, well, no,
Yeah.
I'll stick with it. So it was kind of the path of least resistance, interestingly enough. But when I was in high school, again, I was good at it. I was in my freshman year of high school. I went to the sectional meet. I started to kind of want to get better, but I didn't really know how. We had a couple different coaching switches, but kind of moral of the story, my senior year, we got a new coach, Dale Schrank. Actually, he was a big time coach in Wisconsin, and he actually just passed away recently. But he had coached a ton of different state champions. He had taken a couple of schools to state, and he came to our school. He changed really the course of my life, I think, with was able to take our team. I was in a place where like I had no reason to be able to make it to the state meet. In Wisconsin, you have to qualify at a sectional meet with a time. And at that point, I think like my time was like 6 minutes which was just nothing spectacular. And he took me from 6 minutes to 5:28. I qualified for state my senior year.
Oh,
Only
wow.
school that I did that. And that really, I credit him for that. And he kept on telling me every single day I would come into practice, where are you swimming next year? Where are you going? And that was the first time that it was like, oh, I could actually do this in college if I wanted to. Prior to that, I wouldn't have. I was just going to go actually to probably like University of Wisconsin, and that was kind of going to be it. But he kept on pushing, and he's like, I think that you should swim in college. I think you should look into that. So he pushed me to start to look for that. Valpo recruited me it was super late in the recruiting cycle, probably around, I want to say March.
Mm-hmm.
Coach called, Howard had called my parents, and he was like, is your daughter 5'9"? And they're like, she is. And he's like, we want her. And so that was kind of how I got to Valpo. But again, I was still really not that serious about it until probably my junior year in college was when I actually like cracked down and was like, okay, let me like actually get something out of this. So in terms of my athletic career, I think I did really well with not always putting forth a ton of effort until my last 2 years of college. So that's kind of the whole, kind of scope, like timeline, I guess.
So when you were deciding to come to Valpo, were there any other schools, or was Valpo the only one?
I was looking at Valpo. I was looking at a very small school in Iowa, Loris. And there's a D2 school in Nebraska, was another one that I was looking at. I kind of ended up choosing Valpo after the visit that I went on because, and I think a lot of like student athletes can probably relate when you go on that visit and you just kind of see how the team interacts. And when I saw the way that the men and women's team were interacting with each other, it was like, I want to be a part of that. Like, I want to be a part of it. They really had kind of a family feel to it. And I was like, I want that. So that was kind of the deciding factor for me.
So what was your experience like, swimming at Valpo? Obviously, you're swimming at the Division I level. And I mean, when you swim at a Division I level, I mean, you're talking about, the top of the top of, all of the country. So what was that experience like for you? And how did you feel like you did?
I thought that it was the coolest thing, being a D1 swimmer. And I think Valpo was a really good spot for me because it was a small D1 school when it came to swimming. So I still got what I wanted out of like the education side of it. And, I guess like the comfort, it was very comfortable for me being smaller. But I felt legitimately like an NCAA Division I athlete, that you get the gear and you get the, even kind of walking around, it's like everybody knows that and if they don't know you're a swimmer, they know you're an athlete. I thought that was just in terms of the experience. I was really, really glad that I ended up swimming. In terms of, I think, I had a kind of a rough freshman, sophomore year. Like I said, I really got very serious about it my junior year. I took the summer before my junior year. I had lost probably like 30 pounds over the summer and just came back kind of crazy. Everybody actually called me like Mandria was my name, which is not super politically correct. That was, it was a very, very big difference, very drastic difference. I was finally very serious about it. My junior year was when I think I still have the second fastest mile time in Valpo history. I'd have to do that, but I was a distance swimmer, so the distance events were kind of like a love-hate for me. I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing was that like you jumped into that water and you were like just in your own world. You were in your own zone. And, I was very competitive at that point. And so I think that I really did as much as I could with my potential as a swimmer. I think when I look back at my college years, I don't regret anything. I think that I really did as much as I could as an athlete. So that's what I usually kind of talk with my athletes about now, is that you want to just make sure that everything that you're doing in your experience, that, you look back, or I guess thinking ahead, if I look back, am I going to think that I, reached my full potential, or was there more that I could do? And so for me, I think it was, I felt like I had done everything that I could have done and accomplished as an athlete there.
So what was it like? Because, most people who play, college athletics normally don't get the same feeling of being a part of a big team unless, you're a part of football. But when you were in a sport like swimming, golf, normally even tennis at, a lot of universities, were you in the men's program, really ingratiate into one? What is that experience like?
It was a ton of fun. I think sometimes with like the men's team brought kind of an element of just being kind of like goofy at times. And where I think a lot of times the women's team, we could get pretty serious, and you'd have like a guy come in and just at like almost the wrong time say something, and it kind of broke up whatever, kind of was there. And it was a ton of fun. I still, talk with a lot of my teammates. But I think what was really cool was that it really felt like a family. And so you had, we would all compete individually, and that's kind of the whole, the name of the game when it comes to the individual sports, is that obviously my time was dependent on myself. But you did have the relays. But I think one of the coolest things was those big meets. That was, I think, when you really felt like you were a part of a big team, is that it didn't matter how you did, you really were just kind of wanting to cheer on your teammates. We all kind of knew like the times that people were shooting for, or even like you could tell, I think with swimming, a lot of it is very nonverbal because we can't communicate with each other, other than, sitting on the wall. So I think sometimes even like body language, like, when, somebody came out, they were angry or, happy with it, or even like while they were swimming, you'd be like, ooh, they look rough. Like their form is, really fatiguing. And so I think that was, but it was always those big meets, I think, that would kind of bring us all together. And that's where you felt more of that, like maybe football feel, kind of going towards one goal. So that was a ton of fun, but I loved that was one of the reasons, again, that I kind of went with Valpo, was because they did have the men's team as well. And I think it just brings an element of, competitiveness, some goofiness at times. It was a ton of fun.
So what would you say is the difference between, how a swimmer would train per se, maybe even all season during the year, like in the weight room, whether it be conditioning, versus, other sports?
Yeah, well, I think with swimming, and I think this goes with anything, there's literally like a million ways to get to where you want to go. I think it totally depends on the team. When it came to like, typically teams will have it split up where you've got like sprinters, mid distance, distance. Sometimes it's split into like strokes, is another kind of way to train. I think kind of the stereotype is that swimmers tend to not lift super heavy. We're already doing a ton of cardio in the pool. So a lot of times you won't see a ton of cardio outside of that. Usually core work, that kind of thing. But swimming, I think, like a lot of other individual sports, is also year round. So it's super easy. Like when it comes to swimming, you can get out of shape in like a week, and it takes you like a month to feel like you're back in shape, and kind of get a feel for the water again. So I don't know if that answers that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely does, because I think every sport's a little different. Like with basketball per se, is like, it's very easy to kind of get in shape because you can just play. You don't necessarily have to do a whole bunch of laps. You can literally just go into a gym and just kind of just run, or you can just play pickup. There's a lot of different ways you can, kind of get in shape. But, I think for swimming, to be at the top level, like how you guys are at, it's definitely a lot harder to get in shape and to get out of shape. And, that's one thing I always say about, some of these other sports. I try to tell basketball players, like, we have it very easy because we can just play basketball and get in shape. Other sports, I mean, like, you can't play football to get in shape, or else you're definitely going to get hurt. You can't do that in other sports because it's mainly, fatigue driven. So you can't like play your way into shape like how you can in other sports. But obviously when you said what?
One of the things too that it's actually always been really interesting to me, and one of the questions I'll always ask like some of the athletes I work with is like, so for swimming, as well as a lot of times for like track and field, you do like a taper. So we'll spend your whole season like killing yourself. And then you take like anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, depending on if you're a distance or sprinter. And you kind of rest and you like slowly taper off, so that you're like fresh for this meet. Timing is super critical with that. There are some coaches that absolutely can just nail the timing of taper. It's super dependent on the athlete. A lot of times in swimming, it's like you feel terrible when you're swimming at the meet, but your times are incredible. So that's always one of the things that I like will ask. I think when I was, first working with basketball, I was like, do you guys like rest for games? Like, do you like, is there, like, what do you guys do before games? Because for swimming, if it's a big meet, we can't, like, there are things where it's like, you're not supposed to take like stairs. You're not on, you're not like, you're supposed to really like conserve your energy. So that to me was always crazy, where they're like, no, we just do normal things in the game. It's like, oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, basketball is definitely a very much of a lifestyle thing. I mean, that's the reason why a lot of people, they complain about, basketball players, because we do have it easy. I mean, it could be, negative 32 outside, and, the gym's going to be the same temperature. It could be 85 degrees outside. It's all going to be the same temperature inside most of the time. The only difference is maybe just the backdrop of an arena. I mean, there's nothing going against, every player. So, I mean, one thing with basketball is this definitely a very rhythm game. If you can catch a rhythm in basketball, it is pretty hard to get out that zone. And once someone gets in it, it's pretty hard to get them out that zone. So I think that's the reason why in basketball, rhythm is the most important thing, even more than, whether it's, being in shape. Knowing the X's and O's. I mean, if someone is hot, and they're shooting the ball well, more times than not, they're going to get the results that they want. And it's a tough reality, especially the higher level that you go. So when you decided to, end your career, when, you graduated, you decided to coach. What was that, decision-making like for you?
So, I actually, I took 1 year off before I started coaching. And I worked briefly as a therapist for children with autism. So that was my first like real job. And it was super rewarding. That was what I went to school for. My undergraduate is psychology.
What was that experience like for you?
It was, again, rewarding. It's not read, and you have that like here's the like book smart thing. Like I could tell you every single thing about working with kids with autism, but until you actually do it and apply it, different world. Again, I think it's really served me well with kind of getting into some of the academic stuff that I have. But one of the most difficult jobs I've done, I ended up staying for a year, and that was, I was given the opportunity to go back to school, work as the GA. And I took that pretty quickly. Nothing, there was nothing wrong with the job. It's a burnout job for sure. The clinic I was at was, the children were pretty behavioral. But again, I think it was all kind of leading up to, I guess, kind of where I'm at now. But it's like, I learned a lot about like motivation. I learned a lot about just how, I think kids, but just people in general learn. So that I think it was a really good experience. But it was not something that I could have done for more than a year with what I did. So, but yeah, the job had opened up for the grad assistant back at Valpo. My coach that had coached me, he offered that to me. I had no real coaching experience at all. I mean, I had obviously swam, but being a coach and being a swimmer are two, and I think a coach and a player just in general, two different things. So, for me, that was a transition for sure. I don't think that I really found my voice as a coach until probably maybe 3 years into it. I think my first 2 years as the grad assistant were really just me kind of figuring out how I like to do things, or like even how to interact with athletes and explain things, or, it's like some of the things really come naturally to you when it comes to, how you like your form with strokes, for example. I can do my hand goes in this way. But when I'm actually having to explain that to an athlete, that took a lot for me. That was not second nature to me. I think if you talk to any of my swimmers, I was good at writing really difficult, challenging sets that were sometimes almost impossible to do. My strength. But, in terms of like, I think I also knew what I could do and what I couldn't do. And I really tried to make sure that I was always asking questions, and I'm somebody who's very willing to like learn things. So if, a swimmer had, well, my coach told me, at home told me to do it this way. And well, why did they tell you to do it this way? And I think always kind of making it into a conversation, so that, I was also learning at the same time. So that was, so I did that. I was the grad assistant for 2 years. And I was getting my master's at the same time. So that was the sport admin, program. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I liked it. I ended up recruiting my brother to the team. So I coached him for a little bit, and I really enjoyed the coaching aspect of it. And then I also was kind of like the operations person. So I would coordinate, our training trip. I would coordinate any of the meets, meals, like all of that kind of stuff. Was also something that I would do. So I think that I was also good at that side of things when it came to the planning of it. And then a lot of the learning I did was like just kind of figuring out the mechanics of swimming.
Yeah. Dang. So that you had a lot on your plate there.
Yep.
So what was it like when you wanted to become an academic advisor? Because you were doing a little bit of both at the same time. What was that experience for you like?
Yeah. So when you talk about like having a lot on my plate, I think second year as the grad assistant, and Dr. Rowling actually had approached me about working with basketball. And at that point it was just as a tutor. That was kind of like unheard of. Like if you were a grad assistant, you were just a grad assistant in your one thing. Mm-hmm. And never did like here's a double, so like I would tutor and then also be a grad assistant. But, I was like, well, I've got some experience when it comes to, again, kind of the learning side of things. Mm-hmm. I went to Valpo, so I understand, a lot of how the classes work, how the degrees work, so I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. And I was given two students to start with. And from there that it just kind of like grew a little bit, where I was given kind of the basketball team to more advise really, but kind of coordinate. So I think I was considered the academic coordinator for basketball to start with. Mm-hmm. Just kind of kept expanding. So I was a tutor / grad assistant coach my second year of grad school. And then when I graduated, they offered me a full-time position. And so that was where I was like fully doing both. So I was considered the assistant coach. And then I was also considered the academic, again, I think it was like support coordinator or something like that was the title for that. Shortly after I had accepted that, the head coach for swimming left very unexpectedly. And so then I also had taken up they asked if I would be the interim head coach. And so for a season, I was the interim head coach / academic coordinator. It was, again, it had to have been at that time, because now I could not have kept up with that schedule. Yeah. It was a lot, where I was going from, we would have morning practices at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then I'd be up until sometimes it would be like almost 2 a.m. In the library, working on homework and that kind of thing. So it was a lot to balance. I was busy all the time, but I also really enjoyed it. I really loved working with the students, and I was very passionate for it, I think, at that time. So it was fantastic. And in terms of being like the interim head coach, it was like, when else are you going to get an opportunity to be the head coach of a Division I team, even briefly? So I was able to coach a couple of meets, and I think that, the swimmers really had pulled together for me too. I think both of all the student athletes really were very understanding of the situation, and they all kind of came together and helped out quite a bit. So they made my job easy, but that's always how I felt, was that it was like, it didn't really feel like work, because it was just connecting with the students for me was a ton of fun through there. But yeah, I mean, it was exhausting. But in terms of experience, I could not have asked for a better time.
Mm-hmm. So, you're from Minnesota, and you decide to move back to Minnesota, what was that, process like for you? Was it a hard decision?
Yeah. So, okay. So, originally I'm from Milwaukee. So,
Oh yeah. Well, I meant, why I say
yeah,
Minnesota?
yeah.
I mean,
But like
up north.
Midwest. Yeah. Yeah. So, so I did not know, anybody, in Minnesota at all, besides like maybe some like, relatives that are like very removed, that I've never actually met. So, it was a really, really hard decision for me. One of the things, that I don't know that a lot of people know about me is that, I've got pretty terrible anxiety, like, pretty severe anxiety. And so that was one of the reasons I stayed in Belpo for as long as I did, was that it was very comfortable for me. I ended up there for like 9 years. So as a 27-year-old, I had been there for like a third of my life. And it was like, and I wasn't from Indiana, so I was very, very comfortable there. I knew that there was not going to be the opportunity to move up in the role that I was at Belpo. That was really the deciding factor for me. I have never felt more guilty having to talk to some of the players that I had known for a couple of years that I knew I wouldn't be there when they were graduating. And I had known them since they started as freshmen. And I think telling those students, that was really like heartbreaking for me. It was really difficult for me to leave, but professionally, I had to. I didn't really have a choice at that point, because I could not see myself continuing to work in that type of role past where I was at. I was like, I cannot be 30 something years old, or like, how would I even have a family if I'm, at the pool at this time, and then I'm at the, so logistically I was like, I need to do this for myself. I was applying for really a bunch of different positions. Most everything was full-time, but I had applied for an internship at Minnesota, University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. It was a football internship, and it was specifically for academics. And I think at that point, I was applying for both coaching and academic roles. But when I got the call back for Minnesota, like the interview for that, I had interviewed with my supervisor, and one of the other academic advisors. And there was just like a feeling that I got that was like, I need to do this. It was, it was a paid internship, but it was not a well-paid internship. And so, and I was given, I think, I was given more time, but they really wanted me to start as quickly as I could, because at that point it was the end of August and school was going to start like the 6th of September. So I moved in about a week from like my life in Indiana. I'm 27 years old, and I am taking an internship in Minnesota. And my parents were, I was so excited. And I told my parents, I was like, I think we're going to do this. And they're like, hold up a second. We don't really think this is a great idea. And I was like, no, you don't understand. This is Big Ten. And at that point, I thought that an intern was probably the furthest that I'd be able to get at the Big Ten level, or at a like that. And so I was like, like what, again, in terms of opportunity, I was like, if I don't take this, I'm going to feel like I miss something. So I took the internship, moved my life in a matter of about a week and a half, knew nobody. I ended up moving into, it's actually the apartments I'm in currently, but found like an apartment that you could just find random roommates, and it would fit with the budget that I had, and picked up and left. And on my way to Minnesota, I was driving with my mom. We were kind of like caravanning all of my stuff to Minnesota. Again, I just kind of had this feeling that I was like, I don't care what it's going to take. I am going to stay at Minnesota. I'm going to figure out a way to stay here. And before I even, like, that was on the drive to go there. I had not ever seen the apartment. I had not ever seen the campus, nothing. I just was like, I'm going to take this jump. For me, like, you have to know that if I make a move like that, it takes a lot. Like, I'm in a probably not a great spot to kind of feel that urge to move. So my first role was as a what's called a learning specialist. So this is where when I was at Velpo, I was called like a coordinator. I really was more of what we would call a learning specialist.
Mm-hmm.
The distinction with that, and it totally depends on the school. And this is what I learned about like the academic athletic field. I like didn't know that that was a thing till I got to Minnesota, and they're like, yeah, there's like a couple different roles that you can do. There's the learning specialist role, there's academic advisor, and then there's tutor coordinating. And so as an intern, we got to learn about kind of all of that. But I started out as a learning specialist. So I was working in, almost really in the same capacity as I was at Velpo, in terms of, you're working pretty much one-on-one with students. I had a caseload of about, I want to say like 13 or 14 guys to start with. Specifically football. And we would go through and they would have a task list. We'd go through their weekly assignments. We go through daily assignments. It's keeping them organized. You have to be very, very cautious in terms of like academic integrity. But it was just making sure that, are they understanding the assignment? And a lot of the things that I was doing at Velpo, I think in terms of like instilling confidence, I think that's one of the things that is really cool about being a learning specialist. Mm-hmm. Is that you get to really work with the student athletes and, kind of instill that it's like, you're a person. Like, yes, you're an athlete. And I think a lot of times, especially at the D1 level, you've got students that are coming in that have only been told that they're good at being athletes. Yeah. And kind of passed along. And then when they get to the college level, I think that's sometimes where they can get lost a little bit because they don't see themselves as students. And so I think if you don't have proper support, if you don't have proper plans in place, that's where I think a lot of kids can kind of fall by the wayside a little bit. And that's, I think what is really cool about being a learning specialist is being able to work with those students and see kind of their confidence build a little bit as students. They're not probably going to be super motivated for academics ever. Like, that's just not going to be a reality, but you can really show them that it's like, you're more than just an athlete. Like, you're smart, you can write, you can, like there's so many things that you are able to do. And I think that also helps with that transition past being an athlete, in college. That was my first role, was the learning specialist position. And I loved it. I loved everything about Minnesota, from the city to the school to my coworkers. It was just the resources that they have at the University of Minnesota here are incredible. They have an entire learning center. The Lindell Academic Center is completely devoted specifically to athletes, and that's we have 3 floors that are completely for.
It's a lot bigger than Valpo.
Oh yeah. Then the little library area that we had, but so that was a huge difference. And I kind of think of like when I moved to Minnesota, it's like little pieces of like a puzzle kind of were starting to fit into place. And so, so like click, I got this internship. Then about a month in, one of the advisors left. So this position opened up as a full-time academic advisor. I would not have applied for the job. I did not think that I was at a level. I didn't think I could be an intern at a Big Ten school. I did not think I could be an intern at Minnesota. So I was not going to apply for the job. My supervisor was like, apply, if you want, but she's like, I would really highly recommend that you apply. Through the course of things, I ended up getting the position. And that was 3 months in. And so then I started in January of 2020 was when I started as a full-time academic advisor for wrestling and swim and dive. That was another, just kind of like click, like it was like, okay, right time, right place, had the right experience from Velpo to be a candidate. I'm from, one of the things I think they were looking at was that I'm from the Midwest. I would, potentially be kind of looking to stay there for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
We're absolutely correct about. And so it just, it all kind of fell into place in terms of the job there. And then as an academic advisor, the role switches. So I don't work with students quite in the same capacity. I coordinate everything for them. So I help with their tutoring, just in terms of like, do they need tutoring? I'll make sure that that's coordinated with our coordinators. If I feel like students need more additional help with things or more support, then we figure out, do they need a learning specialist? Do they need, do they need we have grad interns, or like, what can we do to make sure that they're being supported? I meet with my students on a weekly basis. I also am in charge of like coordinating scheduling all of their classes, making sure that they're always within like the NCAA eligibility. So a little bit more of the compliance side of things as well. So that's all kind of part of the role that I play now. It's much more of like a coordinator versus, kind of the day-to-day with the homework and that kind of thing, which I enjoy a lot more. It's quite a bit more flexible, I think, too, just in terms of like, it's more of a 9-to-5 job now.
So what is it about bodybuilding that you're getting into that you really like? Because when I saw your Instagram and you were in the gym lifting, first off, how did you get started into lifting? And then how did that, bring you into, wanting to get into bodybuilding?
Yeah. Well, that's a very, very recent part of my journey. Another kind of puzzle piece that just seems to fit really well. But I've always been into fitness. Probably I've been doing Beachbody workouts since like 2015. It just helps. It's something that has helped with anxiety. It's something that I just like, I'm able to kind of get out of my head for a little bit. And I think that athlete side of me is like, I like having the movement. So I worked with another trainer here in Minneapols for a while. He was fantastic. But I was just still kind of missing the community aspect of things. And, that's like throughout COVID, being in a whole new place that I didn't know anybody. I didn't really have a ton of friends. And that's, part of like I think work as well is, and, in athletics, you're just kind of, work is your life. And so, again, kind of going back to I was kind of in a place where I was like, I need to do something. Switched up my entire routine. This was around Thanksgiving. I just, I had seen one of the trainers, Angie Ocon. I had seen her Instagram. I had done a couple of classes with her at the gym that I had been at. The energy that she brings with her is just really super powerful. She's got this great community that she's created through Ocon Fitness, which is her company. And, so I was like, what the hell? I'm going to put an application for this. And it came with, it comes with a meal plan. It comes with a, workout program. Everything is individualized for you. So I was, again, like I was eating like a bag of hot Cheetos at night for like dinner. Like that was, so I was like, all right, I need to make a change. And so, I was like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and do this. But I also had decided at that point, I was like, I'm going to go 100% into this. So it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it 100%. So the program itself isn't like a bodybuilding program. It really like it's meant for women and men, but it's really kind of specifically women of, all walks of life. We've got women of all ages, all professions, like all different types of goals. Some people want to lose weight. Some people want to gain weight. Some people, it's not even about weight. It's confidence. And so that's really what I was looking for at that point. I felt okay about where I was at, like physically, I guess. And it was really more of like, I'm just not confident. I feel like really like I just don't feel confident about myself. And I would like to be at a spot where I am. So worked this program, I would say about 2 weeks in with a meal plan. Actually a weekend, I lost 11 pounds, which was not the goal for me. Weight has never been part of this. But all of a sudden, it's like it's more of like a, wow, I did that kind of a feeling. So the lifting is part of it. They do workout. You do, it switches every like 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the workout program that you're on. But the one that I started with was really just like basic lifting. I've done some lifting with swimming, but nothing like heavy. But again, like as you're kind of in there, working, it's like, okay, I can lift, I can do bicep curls with 10s. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, okay, I'm going to try 15s. It's like, wow, I did that. It's like, you just, all of a sudden I was starting to feel it proud of myself. And I can't tell you that I have been proud of myself in probably ever. And so I think it's just this like empowering thing. And so I've gotten a little bit probably obsessed, addicted. I don't know, like there's a couple words you could probably
It's
use.
always a good thing. It's always a good thing.
Yeah, it is. But you see the progress. And so again, you probably, you can look at my Instagram and I think you could say, it's like, well, one, this girl has never had abs in her life, and you can tell because she's a host. It's, for me, that's super exciting. But I think, the big thing for me is that it's like, I didn't start like that. I didn't start great. I didn't start, I was not this like super athlete. 3 months ago, if you look at my before picture, or, my start picture, I look like a very average person. And I think that, like going through this, it's just the fact that I've consistently shown up. And I think I've always been consistent. I've always been disciplined, but it was like, I just decided I wanted to show up for myself. And so that I think was the biggest shift. And so now I love lifting. I love everything about going to the gym. That is really like my sanctuary, is when I get there. And but I think that, beyond just the gym side of it, it's the community part. I've got a lot of women that like I will check in with. We just become really close friends through it. So I think that's I'm hoping that I can be somebody who's relatable. I'm kind of a shit show when it comes to, my life on a daily basis, kind of throw things together, but I'm hoping that it's kind of a relatable story. But when it comes to like the actual like competing part, again, 3 months ago, if you asked me physically, mentally, no, I would not have ever thought about competing in any kind of show. I think I've always been kind of interested in it, but I've never been in a spot like I would have been too embarrassed to tell you like, oh, I'd do that. Like that seems kind of cool. And then it was maybe, I think 2 weeks ago, I decided to ask my coach specifically about competing. Because she kept on saying like, it kind of looks like you're like about to prep right now. Like you're shredded. And it was like, but could I do that? Like, is that cool? And again, like I was afraid to even like consider it. And both my coaches that I work with, they were like, no, we think you'd be really good at it. Like, it's just if you want to do it. And I was like, yeah, I want to go for it. So, so that to me, I think 2 weeks ago, the shift for me was deciding that like I have a goal now. So I'm hoping to compete in a show in October. And I think that as, again, kind of that competitive, like athletic side of me, I'd keep doing this even if I didn't have a show. I love the lifestyle. I like having a meal plan. I like the routine. I like lifting. I like pushing myself. I love the community. Like I am an Ocon team member for life. But I think knowing that I would be walking up on stage in a bikini and in heels in October, I'm like, all right, let's go. And so it's just really lit like a fire for me. But it's really what I think is so incredible to me is that it's, work has always been number one for me. And so that's like a hobby, like, this has really kind of now become more of my identity. And it's really just opened up like a ton of stuff for me, just in terms of like connecting with people and even people at the gym. I've got like my regulars that have kind of become friends now. And it's just been, it's been an awesome journey. It's a great, you really have a great community. I think when it comes to like people in fitness and like athletes, I think that's just, there's a different mindset when it comes to athletes, which is why I think I've always liked working with athletes. And that's why I think I couldn't work strictly academics. I think there has to be some sort of athletic edge. Yeah.
So where can people follow you at? Your Twitter, Instagram, where can people follow you at?
Yeah, so I only have the Instagram really. It's Andrea Bretl 92. That's I think where I'm going to really kind of post everything that I do have a Facebook as well. That's more, I'm still kind of working on that because I've got more family that's on Facebook and but the Instagram for sure is just kind of going to be my I just kind of decided it's like, this is going to be kind of my journey through being, competing and prepping and deciding if I, this is something that I want to continue to do. So yeah, so if you want to kind of see the journey, see the mess that is me, but also, you know, a little bit of academics in there. Yeah, definitely take a look.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate it. You know, a lot of people are now in my situation and, you know, are looking forward to, you know, kind of ending off their college career, you know, whether they're in school, whether they're, you know, playing sports or whatever, and people coming into college. So I think that this was, you know, a huge help to a lot of people, you know, just on what, you know, life should look like, you know, here in the next couple of years for them too as well. So I just wanted to thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, again, like with my story, you can be 27 and you can decide to do something completely different with your life. So there's pressure to find something, you know, directly after school, take your time with it. And, you know, it'll start to come together. So that's my advice there.
Thank you. Thank you.